Hey guys, it's Robin Eckersley, and I am in my closet. This is my closet at home. My husband is downstairs on a work conference call at the moment, so I didn't want the audio to be interrupted. So, for those of you who are watching on Instagram or on YouTube, that's why this looks like I'm in a hostage situation, right? So quarantine life when both folks work from home. So everything's fine. I'm just in the closet, just getting some soundproofing as much as I can. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast after the fact, I hope that this audio comes out okay and clear for you. Today's AF episode is based on a quote that my mentor likes to say. Essentially, the content of our lives is the curriculum for our evolution. And I love this quote so much because it is reflective of how we can use what's happening in the life around here. My sister just commented, glad to know that you're there voluntarily. Yes, I'm in this closet of my own accord. And luckily I just organized it. So it's actually an aesthetically very pleasing place to be right now. The content of our lives is the curriculum of our evolution. I think this is a particularly relevant quote these days because there's a lot happening in the content of our lives, right? It doesn't really matter if you're in the United States or not. Things are particularly I guess, intense here in the US, but if you're overseas too, you have your own share of local and geopolitical challenges to be dealing with yourselves. So the content of our lives is full these days. There's a lot happening in our lives, no matter where you are, no matter what kind of path you're walking. We collectively are in a space of a lot of things shifting, and a lot of things shifting probably not to our preference, right? And so when things don't go to our preference, we can be upset, we can be scared, we can be frustrated, we can be angry. There can be a lot of emotional energy moving that might not be very productive to where you would love to be, and how you would love to be moving through life these days, right? So what can we do about that? Lots and lots of things are outside of our control, which this is a good thing, right? Because if everyone had control over everything around them, life would be a real big mess. We can only be responsible for that which is within our control, including our own experience of what's happening around us. So the content of your life is anything happening in or around your life. So that could be the news, that could be other people in your world, that could be your job, that could be your relationships, anything that's happening currently. You can choose to take it as something to feel out of control and helpless with, and write that story and say, this is something that I am at the mercy of. I am at the effects of, if you want to take it a step further, that I am a victim of, that this is something, life is happening to me. You can write that story. You can package life and everything that's happening right now in that wrapper. That's an option of yours. If it serves you, go for it. If you need a little bit of I just need to cry it out and get this out and just release all of this energy, and that story helps you to do that, because sometimes we all need a good emotional, cry. We all need to get it out. If that's going to serve you, run with that story, run with that narrative. If it's not going to serve you, because it's not a productive headspace to be in, let's treat it like content. Let's treat it like a curriculum. Okay, all of this stuff is happening around me. I have all this life from news. I have, lots of people's opinions. I have, my my next door app blowing up with people, insert each other to their lives. Whatever it is that is causing waves in your world, especially if they're not going to your preference, then I invite you to rewrite that narrative of how you view your life, how you view what's happening in the world right now, as what is this trying to teach me? Where am I trying to go? Not trying to teach me as in, okay, life is bestowing a lesson upon me, because that might not resonate with you. But how can you actively use this as an opportunity to know yourself more deeply, to grow through this, to become more skilled in self-mastery and self-leadership through these times? Because if you're alive, you're not done growing. If you are watching this video, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're interacting with this content, you are not finished. There is so much more for you to learn, so much more for you to become, so much more for you to do in a way that brings you alive. And so to do that, we want to be making sure that we use what's around us to facilitate our evolution. Content of our lives is the curriculum of our evolution, if you choose. Lots of people move through life reactively, passively, which is super normal and very common. My offer to you is that you take a look at it from another perspective to see what else it could be. If you want to live in a more proactive way, if you want to push yourself, if you want to grow, if you want to evolve, if you want to say, hey, I know there's more of me to grow into. I know there's more of me to share with the world, to create something amazing. I know there's more of life to be experienced. Then I invite you to take on this narrative of saying the content of my life is the curriculum of my evolution. So when things happen that are not to our preference, that means things are happening that we are ascribing meaning to that does not align with us in some way, saying, I wish this was different in some way. It might be something very basic, like, I wish there was less genocide in the world. Very common, very, makes perfect sense to have that, to have that thought. It could be something to, I wish my employer was more receptive to my ideas. I wish he was less rude and more open. Now, you can focus on how things are going wrong, how things are not okay, right? And how you wish they were different. Or you can kind of think of that as running into a wall over and over again. Because if we're wishing, then we're not doing anything about it. And we're doubling down on our inability to do anything, right? And so to move it more proactively, we want to be in a space of, okay, how can I grow through this? I'm getting upset with this situation, this person, these circumstances. What does that say about me? Where am I supposed to grow here? This could be not even something where you look to change the situation or change the outcome, because if that's out of your control, which I said, many, many things are out of our control. What can you do? How can you use this as something to help evolve you further? You can start thinking of it in a way of, okay, this is a lesson, this is an opportunity for me to learn how to become more proactive and healthy in my processing of frustration. I can use this opportunity to take a look at the habits I have when I get upset about things not going to the way that I believe they should go and I would prefer them to go. I can take a look at what I tend to do and examine, is this still healthy for me? Does this still serve me? Or is this an old habit that I'm running over and over again? And can I replace that habit with something more productive and more self-serving? Because what we ultimately want to do is we ultimately want to bring ourselves to a place where we are becoming actively and intentionally the best version of ourselves, the next better version of ourselves. Because not only do we get the benefits of that, obviously, we feel good, we feel fulfilled, we feel aligned, we're more engaged with life, we're more exhilarated with life, but everybody in our world gets the benefit of a better version of you as well. So your colleagues, your relationships, the people you care for, the people who just interact with you, the missions that you serve, whatever kind of work that you apply your time and talents toward, they benefit from you being more masterful over yourself. They benefit from you being a more empowered version of yourself. So there's no downside here, except I will say that when you embark on a journey of self-empowerment, when you work to become more masterful over yourself, it's going to require you to stretch and grow. And stretching and growing, especially when it comes to personal development, is not exactly a comfortable process. But that's the only downside, because the discomfort is much more tolerable than plateauing and knowing that you could have been done, had created more, right? That regret of, I wish I would have, that pain of that regret is far worse than the discomfort you feel when you're asked to repattern your old habits, when you're asked to take a closer look at yourself and say, hey, maybe the way I've been living up to now, maybe the way I've been thinking, maybe the way I've been interacting with others, interacting with my finances, with myself, just living and making decisions, maybe this has got to change. Maybe it's time to change. And that transformational process of growth and evolution to create that change and bring about that change is uncomfortable, but it's a heck of a lot better than saying, well, nope, this is it. I'm going to stay exactly who I am for the rest of my life because I'm too scared to grow, or because I think this is as good as it gets. The choice is yours, really. So if you choose the path of self-empowerment, if you choose the path of personal development, if you choose the path of, I am going to do whatever I can to thrive through this life, instead of be at the mercy of old habits, learned behaviors, old assumptions and mindsets, then one of the most empowering things we can do is to take a look at what's happening in our world as a challenge opportunity. Say, okay, this is where I get to grow, right? The turmoil that's around me, I can have the human experience, I can feel the feelings, I can get upset, I can process those, and I'm going to choose to see what's coming up for me and use those things that these stimuli are now spotlighting for me as an opportunity for me to know myself more deeply, to love more deeply, to evolve through this, and to say, how can I do things better? How can I think about this differently? How can I serve more fully? How can I use this as an opportunity to know perhaps where and how I contribute to society in a more effective way? Okay, so there's a lot of things happening in our world right now that have either never happened in your generation, depending on what generation you are, or things are happening very differently than you have seen them occur before, right? So this is all in one aspect of another or another. Life is different than we have known it before. So we're all in new territory in one form or another. Given that we are in new territory, we want to take a look at, okay, I'm always on a process and a journey of learning. I am on a perpetual journey of evolution and growth. Where is it time to grow? Because we are very complex beings, right? There's many aspects to who we are and what makes us up. Everything from our mindsets, to how we treat our bodies, to how we think about finances, to how we interact in our relationships. It's all in a space of opportunities for growth, shall we say, growing edges. Mel, I feel like 2020 is forcing us to reflect in this way. Yes, 2020 is presenting you. You can say, there's a lot of people who are like, cancel 2020, this is the worst year ever. Da, da, da. Granted, lots of terrible things have happened this year. lots of detrimental things have happened to lots of groups and individuals this year, especially. Up to now, self-reflection has been either triggered by something happening, in your personal life, saying, okay, something has changed drastically, therefore I'm kind of forced to look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, the way I've been living, the way I'm doing things up to now, is this still going to work? Or is it time to change something happening here? Or personal development has been elective, saying maybe there's something that's a little bit more subtle in your life that's saying, hey, it's time to grow. It's time for you to take a look at these things. It's not anymore. Because all of our old habits and behaviors that we have picked up along the way, they have served us in that they've gotten us up to, where you are right now. It has played a part in the life that you have built up to now. And before 2020, it was basically, you have to consciously ask the question, do you want to keep doing things the way that you're doing them? Or do you want to do things with a little bit more ease? Do you want to take the weight off your shoulders? Do you want to feel better about yourself? Do you want to feel like you show up and contribute more? Or something happens that kind of forces you to look at that. But now everyone is saying, hey, 2020 is you can't just bury your head, right? Because every time you come up for air, there's always going to be some reminder that something has to change. And yes, lots of things outside of ourselves not only have to change for us to thrive as a society, but are also in the process of change. We have been in a process of transition collectively for going on 10 months now, right? And even before that, depending on how you want to look at things, maybe 4 years ago, maybe, I don't know. So when we come through transition, when we're forced to come through transition, or when we walk into transition willingly, the opportunity lies in deciding what you would love to come out with on the other side. You get to have a hand in designing what your post-transition existence and norms look like. And a lot of people don't realize that. Most people feel like, well, the world is on fire and I'm just trying to find my place through it and trying to survive, and whatever happens at the end happens. I can hope for things to turn out and go back to the way they were, or I'm just going to live how people tell me to live. You have the opportunity to say, okay, well, I notice in this time of reflection, in this year of reflection, that working from home, for example, is causing me to re-examine my engagement with my work, saying, actually, maybe I really do love this work, and now I get an opportunity to do it uninterrupted, right? Because maybe at the office, you're constantly getting interrupted. Maybe you're constantly unproductive in the office, and this is an opportunity for you to reconnect with your work. Maybe it's an opportunity to say, this was a big one for me, that life is short. Life is short. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. So you better frickin' make today count. Whatever you're doing today, make it align with the type of mark you would love to leave. Now, it might not be to the extent that you would love. So maybe you want to start a foundation. Maybe you want to, change a kid's life. Maybe you want to do something really big, and you're feeling like the pieces aren't in place right now for you to be able to do that. That's completely fine. That doesn't mean that you can't do anything. There's always a fraction of an action, or even a full small action, that you can take toward that mark that you want to make, toward that contribution, toward that version of you that you would love to be. It always sits within us. Before we we're often encouraged to look outside of ourselves first, right? Start doing this, contribute this, and be a part of this. That's great. And the most effective mark we can make begins with us examining who we are on the inside first. How are we being? How are we showing up in the world? So when we take a look at there's a lot of conflict right now, whether that's, differing political opinions, whether it's conflict over a personal relationship, whether you're in conflict with yourself. Maybe there's an unhealthy relationship here where you are your worst enemy and you're very judgmental and condescending to yourself. um, how you've navigated conflict in the past, is that still going to work for you? And if it's working, is that the way that you would love for it to be working? Saying, we justify detrimental habits, we justify destructive behaviors, or I'm hesitant to say bad behavior, but behavior and decisions that don't serve ultimately. We're quick to justify those because so many other people do it too. Saying, well, yeah, everybody is their own worst enemy. Everyone has negative self-talk. Everyone explodes during arguments. It's normal. Yeah, that might be normal in terms of it is, by the definition, it is a norm of how people tend to react in these circumstances. The opportunity is this something you want to actively choose? Do you want to keep doing this? Because there are other ways of being. There are other ways of thinking and behaving. That's your choice. Once we realize that everything that we do, including how we feel, is a choice, then we're faced with a crossroads to say, okay, how I have been making this choice up to now, maybe kind of on autopilot up to now. Do I want to continue being on autopilot and do that consciously now instead of unconsciously? Or do I want to explore another way of being? Do I want to explore a more productive way of navigating conflict, of interacting with other people, of serving a mission that's bigger than myself? Whatever that looks like for you. So when you surround yourself with the news, with stimuli of things outside of you, when you hear about things happening in the world, when you experience things happening in the world, treat it like the content of a curriculum for your growth and evolution. So now, for example, there's a lot happening politically in the United States, and that in and of itself, just that sliver of society or sliver of modern goings on, politics is super complex. So you could be looking at it from a myriad of perspectives, saying, okay, not only could I take this as content of a curriculum to maybe educate myself more on topics that I really hadn't paid attention to more, and go the more traditional getting involved with politics route, learning about issues, learning about candidates. Do I want to re-examine why I believe the things that I believe? Why I've been making the choices that I believe? Do I want to take a look at how I form my opinions of issues, of candidates, or whatever? I tend to make opinions based on what I read or what I see or what I hear or what other people I trust tends to say. I just tend to adopt those opinions. Or do you put in the legwork to go more deeply? These are all, these are questions that you can ask yourself to choose and basically build your own curriculum for personal growth. Also, when it comes to politics, how do you tend to behave when you're exposed to conflicting views? Do you notice that you tend to immediately put a wall up and say, no, you are wrong, I am right, and not hear the other party? Are you looking to improve your communication to facilitate more receptive interactions and productive conversations with people who believe different things from you? So if we just take, just a couple minutes to take a look at only the sliver of life that is the political climate in the United States, you can already see there's like 10 different topics that you could put into your personal evolution curriculum. So we don't have, it can be very, very easy to hear the things that are happening in the world, and to say, well, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and just leave it at that. We can feel the feelings of futility, we can feel the feelings of anger, of frustration, whatever it is, and we can leave it like that and constantly experience that cycle with every new news story and development that comes in. That can be the cycle. Or you can choose to say, you know what, I'm going to go deeper into this and choose to evolve in this time of craziness, of transition, and actively choose where it's time to grow. Because life is so complex, there's a million opportunities of areas that you can choose to grow in and evolve through. And you're being presented with like a buffet of these opportunities now, because 2020 has been nuts, right? 2020 has been, I say nuts in terms of different than any other year you have experienced. And I don't care if you're 30 minutes old or if you are 130 years old. This is a different year to any other year before. Take this as an opportunity. Choose one aspect about yourself to build a growth curriculum around. And what I mean by that is to be self-reflective and say, hey, I'm noticing myself. I'm noticing how I show up. I'm noticing how I think and how I interpret the world around me. And I realize that I have agency over how I choose to do that in the future, how I choose to think, how I choose to make decisions, how I choose to engage. That's within your control. But in order to get control over that, you have to grow through shedding some of the habits and norms that are not serving you anymore and replacing them with something more productive, right? So you can say, you know, this comes to visioning. What kind of version of yourself would you love to evolve into? You know, I would love to be a woman who is super self-confident. I would love to be a woman who is very decisive and who takes action on her decisions right away. I would love to be someone who knows their money. I would love to be someone who, goes for her dreams no matter what. What needs to happen? You know, look at the whole pie of who you are, and take a look at, okay, in order for you to be that future version of yourself, what edges of that pie need a little bit of nurturing now or due for an upgrade? So it could be behavioral, it could be habits, it could be making assumptions, maybe it could be self-care, it could be a whole lot of things, it could be physical care, it could be getting more comfortable with conflict, it could be getting more comfortable with judgment, maybe. So whatever it is, you are presented with a huge opportunity to grow in many different ways, and that is amazing. Because up to now, unless your own personal life has been turned upside down in some way, or some major transition has happened to you personally, or you have personally elected voluntarily to be in a space of growth and transformation, you don't get an opportunity, kind of maybe thankfully, like this year, ever, 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 ever. So I invite you to take a look at everything happening around you causes a reaction. Use those reactions to whatever's happening in the context of your world as little signals that say, hey, your reaction here says something about how you're processing. It says something about how you think of the world. Your reaction says something about something more, something deeper than just a surface reaction. Use that little flag as a spot to go explore. That's essentially what I wanted to chat with you guys about today when it comes to the quote, the content of our lives is the curriculum of our evolution. So how you are relating to the world around you right now is a clue. And it could be a signal that, hey, this area of your life, It's time to grow. It's time to evolve this thing. It's trying to transform this aspect of you. So I invite you to take a look at that. And if there's something that you're looking to grow, but you're not quite sure of what it means, you're more than welcome to reach out and send me a message. I'm happy to help you kind of figure that out. Um, and if you feel like someone is really in that space of feeling overwhelmed or feeling like they have no agency in the experience that is 2020, send them this video, send them this podcast episode in case it is useful to them. Unfortunately, historically, as we in the Northern Hemisphere are moving into the winter months, things like depression are much more common, right? And when you layer seasonal depression and you layer, the holiday season coming up, which can be really hard for a lot of people, and you layer that on top of already a series of whammies that we've gone through in 2020, and you layer on this being a presidential election year, and elections for lots of different positions in the United States. And then you layer on, things like wildfires and floods and hurricanes and all that stuff. It is more important now than ever for you to realize the agency you have in your own experience of this world. It can be very easy to feel like you are just basically the punching bag of life and that you just have to take it. Your mind and the way that you interpret and process the world is much more powerful than I think any of us truly understand. So let's use that to our advantage. Let's get to know that. Let's choose to grow through this and not just be, back in the corner getting slammed by all the things that 2020 has to give us, right? It's a huge opportunity here. So as always, today is the perfect day. Today is the perfect day. This is the perfect year to dream up and dive into a life that actually lights you up. So let's start by understanding, okay, what's happening around me in life? Maybe this is a potential curriculum for my evolution. Maybe this is how I can grow. Maybe these are signals for what's ready to evolve within myself. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. I will chat with you live Wednesday next week at 1:30 Pacific. And you can reach out to me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on email, lots of different places. I hope you dream up and dive into the life that actually lights you up. I'm here to help you with that. Talk soon. Bye.